Hello and welcome to our second Adobe Illustrator tutorial video. So for this time we will discuss about the concept of stroke and fill in Adobe Illustrator. So technically this is a basic ways of producing illustration in Adobe Illustrator, and as we discussed in the first video that we made, Adobe Illustrator is basically works on a vector format system. Unlike Photoshop, it works on pixelation, rasterized image, but Adobe Illustrator is basically a vector images. Okay, so in order to produce any kind of images, it will consist of stroke and fills. So this is a two, I guess, ways of producing images or illustration in Illustrator, and it consists of information of line, which is what we call strokes, and then what do you fill in between the line, and that is basically the fill, the one that's basically filling the space in between lines. Okay, and you can basically produce stroke and fill using any of the tools. Over here you have the pen tools. Pen tools. This is the most common one, or line, and I would say shape tools. So this one is rectangle. So let's just start up with the first I guess example, so which is line. So you have here one single line. If you can see that it's basically being selected. Okay, so if you go into select mode, so this is a line. It actually exists, but as you can see, there is no appearance on it. So if you click on, if you like deselect the line, it will disappear, but it's still there. So this is one of the advantage of Illustrator. So it is possible for you to hide the object by disabling the strokes and the fill for that particular object or lines in this case. So the reason why it doesn't have anything on it is because over here we did not select any kind of color. So it's when you have this red cross over here, that means it is disabled. So the strokes and the fill for this particular line that we select is basically disabled. So in order for us to enable it, we just select one of the colors, and then it will appear as black. See that? So this is a black line, and if you change the color into red, it will become red. Okay, so if you look up at the bar over here, this is all the information that you will have, that it will present all the information on any selected images or any selected vector, I would say, information or vector subject. Okay, so if you can see here, this represent the stroke, the square with the smallest square inside of it, that represents stroke, and over here it's actually represent the fill, which basically what's happening inside the lines or inside the stroke. It will be a lot clearer if we just if we just draw a rectangles over here. So if you see, this rectangle only have red line because it only has line or stroke as it's being enabled. So the fill is actually being disabled for this particular rectangle. So what you can do is that you click on it and then just click any colors, and it become blue and red. So that is the stroke and the fill. So the red is the stroke, the fill is the blue, right? So it is represented by these two boxes over here, and it's also represented by this over here. So the one that has just a square is basically representing the fill, and the one that's that has this kind of shape and then like empty in the middle is basically representing the stroke. Alright, so if you click anything or any subject, it will reflect whatever nature of that subject. So for example, if we copy and paste this one, right, and then we just change its stroke to be, for example, greens, and then the fill will be yellow. So if you click on it, you will see it's changed according to whatever nature of the subject, and then you click on it, it's changed. And that is also how you change whatever attributes or whatever color that you want it to be. So you just double click on this, and then you will have the color picker on, and then you're free to pick whatever color you want, or you can just change it over here, right? So that's stroke and fill. And however you produce your subject or your vector, it will always be about these two system. It will always represent, or it will always consist of these two things: stroke and the fill, right? So whether it's rectangle, whether it's rounded. So if you look at here, so this is another example, right? So over here you can see it is basically black color fill without any kind of stroke. So you can enable it by just clicking it, and then pick any color that you want, and it will be with red line and black fill. So the fill and the stroke is always on any kind of subject that you do, right? For example, eclipse, it's gonna be the same things. You know, it will always have its stroke and it always have its fill, and you can always disable or enable the stroke or the fill according to your preference, right? Okay, another thing about the fill, even though it's not being closed, for example, over here you have a closed plane or a closed form or object, right? So what happens if you don't close it, like you have it open like that? It will still produce the fill if you enable it. See that? It's just that it end where you don't have the lines. You know, if you move the lines or if you continue on the line, it will shape itself accordingly. See that? So the fill will still be there, and if you close it, it will still be there as a fill. But even if you don't close it, the fill will still appear on your object if you enable it. If you disable it, then it will disappear and it will just be the line. And you can also disable the line or the stroke if you wish, and that will be just the fill. So you can always create any shapes, any form, and then after creating it, you can still edit using this column over here, or using that particular menu over there. Alright, so that's what you have, the nature of stroke and fill, the basic of producing illustration on Adobe Illustrator. There always will be strokes and fill. Now, right now we're going to go into a little bit details on the stroke. Alright, just go through the stroke first. Let's just create another rectangle. So there's a few functions when it comes to the stroke. First, you can control the size of the stroke, right? Just move your cursor over here, click it, and then there's a few options, different sizes that you can quick edit, that you can pick. Okay. Another way is just scroll your wheels up and down, and it will change the size accordingly. Okay, so that's one of the settings of the stroke. You can actually change the size of the strokes, right? Now there's another options, is when you open, go to menu, Windows, and then go to stroke, right? So for me, I already have my strokes over here. If your stroke look like that, you just have to click on the three lines, on the triple lines, and then show options. Then you'll have a more option that you can work with. Okay, now the stroke, you can change the nature of the stroke. Right now what we have is like a sharp edges. It is also possible for you to change it into rounded edges. Okay, so rounded edges looks more clean, or I guess more casual in some ways, right? So you can do that. And if you have a closed object like a loop of line, then this option will be enabled. Means you can do this kind of things, and also that means the thickness of the stroke will goes inside the shapes. See that? if you click another option, means like the thickness of the stroke will go outwards. Now another thing that you can do with stroke is that it's possible for you to do this kind of thing like dash line, okay, and it's also you can also let me just make it a bit thinner so that it makes sense, okay. All right, you can also control the size of the dash and or the size of the gap between the dash, see that, okay. And when you do the dash, for me I would always do this kind of option. I will always opt to this option because what this do is that it's make sure that the edge will not be like a separated line. If you don't click on these options, you can see that see it doesn't create a sort of neat dash line. So especially when you're working on something formal like architectural presentation drawings or whatnot, so it's best that for you to do this because that basically create a more decent dash line, okay. If you look at next to the size of the stroke, you also have like different kind of line. Let me just disable the dash line. So with either it's uniforms or this kind of lines or this kind of line. Now another thing that I want to show you guys about fill is that not only that you can control the color of the fill, so let's just work with fill right now and disable the stroke, right. You can also change the fill to become gradient. So underneath this panel you can see this is a solid color, but this is what we call gradient. That once you click on it, then it will turn into gradient and it will enable the options or the setting for gradient. So over here you can edit the gradient, whether you want it to be a linear tile gradient or radial tile gradient, or even what do you call this, freedom gradient. So the one that I always use is always linear or radial gradient because it is easy to control. Now how do you change the color? So usually it has two, but you can actually add more colors to it, and that will affect the gradient that was produced, okay. So you can change it and then just pick any color that you want, and then it will change accordingly, right. So this is one yellow, or perhaps this one we gonna go to orange, or yellows and blues. Oh, that's ugly. Okay, yellows and purple, right. And you can control how it's appear using this kind of these little dots over here or square, right. You can also use this thing, so you can drag it, and it will change according to your positioning of the dots, right. So that's the fill, and you can always go back to the solid color. Just click on that and it will become purple again, and then just click on that and it will become the gradients again, or you can just disable it all together, right. So that's how flexible the system in Adobe Illustrator is. I mean, is when you do something, it is not just it's not like permanent things. You can always edit your line, you can always go back and edit your fill, edit your line stroke accordingly, unlike Photoshop or any other kind of application. So that's why illustration or Adobe Illustrator is really suitable and very powerful software for you to produce illustration on, right. So Photoshop is more into photo, I guess, right. I guess that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video then.